let's move on to 3-14. Please don't forget that you need to know how to work the high-low method. We know the total cost formula. Total cost is equal to the fixed costs plus the variable cost per unit multiplied by the number of units, by the activity. I've put activity. That's the one we've already used. So what we want to find out when we have a mixed cost, so now I'm going to talk about mixed costs. The mixed cost is one where there is a fixed cost component and a variable cost component. And what you're trying to do using the high-low methods is you're trying to separate those components so that you have the fixed cost and the variable cost separate. And why do we want to do this? We want to do this because, of course, fixed costs don't change with the level of activity. Variable costs too. So you have two costs with different natures included in a mixed cost. In order to use it to predict the future, we got to separate these two costs out. And so we do that using the high-low method. So the high-low method is that the variable cost per unit can be calculated. And we calculate it by doing the high dollar value minus the low dollar value divided by the high units, like the activity, minus the low activity. And once you do that division, you're going to end up with the variable cost per unit. And then we can use that to do the calculation. High dollar is the same as same month, same period. Let's do same period, because sometimes we get like 3 months and 3 months and 3 months, same period as the high activity. And similarly, of course, the low dollar is the same period as low activity. Okay, so in this case, we know the variable cost per unit is going to be equal to, and by the way, do we use the activity to find the high and the low, or do we use the dollars to find the high and the low? We never use the dollars. We always use the activity. And let's just think about why we always use the activity. We always use the activity because it's the activity that affects the variable cost. So the activity is driving the variable cost. The cost is not driving the activity. The activity is causing the variable cost to go up and down. And so because the activity causes the variable cost to go up and down, it's the activity that is the driver. So let's just read the question. Holly Thompson has been operating a beauty shop in a university town for the past 10 years. Recently, Holly rented space next to her shop and opened a tanning salon. She anticipated that the cost for the tanning service would primarily be fixed, but found that the tanning salon costs increased with the number of appointments. Costs for this service over the past 8 months are as follows. Then they give us the tanning appointments and the total costs. And notice that Holly even talks about this, that the costs of the tanning services are primarily fixed, but costs increase with the number of appointments. So the number of appointments is the driver. Okay, so which month represents the high point? So high point is March. So March is 6,200. So I'm going to put that the high point is March, and that is 6,200 activity. We automatically take the total cost from there, and the total cost from there is 5,580. Okay, what is the low point? January, and it is 1,400. And we see from that 1,400, we take the cost, that's 3,516. So we can now take this information and we can calculate the variable cost per unit, because we've got, I'm going to move this down a little bit. I need a little bit more room. Okay, so we've got the high dollar value, which is this, and we're going to subtract the low dollar value. And we have the high units, and we're going to subtract the low units. And so when we do that, of course, We've got 2,064 divided by the, I don't know why it said that. It's not dollars. I'm going to change that to a regular number, general. There we go. And so we can calculate it, divide it. So the variable cost per unit is 43 cents. So we did number 2 using the high-low method, compute the variable cost for tanning, compute the fixed cost for the month. Well, now we can use that formula we had, right? Because we have that formula right up here, what the total cost is. Well, I can fill in the variable cost and I can fill in the total cost. Do we want to use the high or do we want to use the low? We'll use the high. So we need the total cost for the high. So remember the high total cost is $5,580. That, of course, is going to equal. What we have is we have the fixed costs, which we don't know. And then we're going to add in the variable costs per unit, which is right here. And then we're going to multiply it by the high activity, 6,200. We're going to multiply these two. So in this case, we can take this 5,000. Again, we can take the equal sign. We can take the fixed costs. We can take the plus, but I'm going to multiply these two now. So now solve for the fixed costs. Well, in order to solve for the fixed costs, I'm going to subtract the 2,666 from both sides. So 5,580 minus 2,666 is going to be equal to the fixed costs, and the fixed cost plus, of course, 2,666 minus 2,666, which is equal to 0. So fixed costs are equal to 2,914. Okay, using your answers to required 2, write the cost formula for the tanning services. Well, we can do that. We can say now that the total cost is equal to the fixed cost, which is 2,914, and add in the 0.43 multiplied by X, which is the activity. Now, if we had done this for the low point, would our answer have been different? So we can do this calculation for the low point also, right? We can take the low point dollars, and we know that this is equal to the fixed costs plus the 0.43 multiplied by the low activity, which is 1,400. And if you did that calculation, I am telling you the fixed cost would be 2,914. Now, I do want to look to see, nope, see, there's no rounding here. If there's rounding, the answers would be different. So there's the total cost formula. Calculate the total predicted cost of tanning services for September for 5,000 appointments using the formula found in requirement 3. Okay, so we want the total cost. We've got the 2,000. So I'm going to do the formula. Okay. Total cost for September is going to be equal to the 2,914 plus the 0.43 multiplied by 5,000. Okay. And if we do that, it's 2,914 plus 0.43 multiplied by 5,000. That is equal to 5,064. So this is the total cost for September. Now, notice in April, we had 5,000 right here in April, and it cost 4,800. So do you notice that the 4,800 that we have there is not the same as the 5,064? Why is it not identical? I'm going to highlight this again. You can see in April, we had 5,000 tanning appointments and the cost was 4,800. Now we're assuming September is 5,000 and we ended up with a totally different cost. Why is it not identical? So when we're doing a cost formula using the high and low, it's a prediction. So when we use the high and low, we ignore all the data points in between. It's one of the drawbacks of the high-low method because it only uses 2 data points, the high and the low, and it creates a line between the high and the low data points, and it ignores all the other data points. This is simply a prediction. It doesn't mean that it's going to be exact. There is no exact in prediction. This is an estimate. So because we didn't use the 5,000 in our calculation when we were determining a formula, because it wasn't the high and it wasn't the low, so we ignored it, right? So again, this is a prediction. It's not perfect. It does ask us how much of this total cost is the fixed cost. Well, we already know that. The fixed cost, of course, we know from right here. The fixed cost is going to be, there it is. That's the amount of the fixed cost. And how much is the variable cost? I can just subtract it. So this is the total fixed cost that's included, and this is the total variable cost that's included. Because I want to be super clear. This is predicting. We do not expect these numbers to actually come true. And remember the drawback of the high-low method.